What if I told you that Ferrari could have found a way to gain an advantage, without breaking any rules? Because what happened in Fiorano was not a simple test. It was something that has put the entire Formula One on alert. Private tests in theory for rain tires, but with data so shocking that even the FIA has had to intervene. More than 400 kilometers on the track, completely controlled conditions that no other team can replicate, and a performance that has surprised even Ferrari itself. Now the question that shakes the paddock is very clear. Was it just a test, or are we facing one of the most intelligent and controversial movements in recent years? Because the FIA has already opened an investigation, and this could change everything. The starting point of this whole story is not a controversy. It is an apparently normal test that, in a matter of hours, became the focus of the entire Formula One. Ferrari appeared in Fiorano together with Pirelli with a clear objective on paper: to develop rain tires for 2027. A completely legal activity, scheduled within the technical calendar after the cancellation of other tests, and that in principle should not have generated any type of suspicion within the paddock. But in Formula One, context is everything, and this was not just any context. Because Ferrari did not come to this test as just another team. It arrived in the midst of technical tensions with other teams, after having raised suspicions about rival systems and with the FIA already managing several open fronts. That is to say, any movement of the Italian team was going to be observed with a magnifying glass. And yet, what happened exceeded any expectations. The chosen scenario was key to understanding everything that would come later. Fiorano is not just any circuit, it is a private laboratory. A place where Ferrari controls absolutely everything, from the asphalt to the weather conditions. Its artificial irrigation system allows it to accurately simulate rain, something that no other equipment can replicate with that level of control. This turns each lap into pure, clean, repeatable, and extremely valuable data. And then the first element that changes the narrative appears: the magnitude of the test. Lewis Hamilton didn't go out for a few evaluation laps. He completed more than 140 laps, accumulating more than 400 kilometers on the track. This is not a simple validation test, this is a massive collection of information. Every turn, every braking, every transition between compounds generated data that, when properly analyzed, can reveal profound behaviors of the car. This is where the test stops being normal. Because when you drive that volume of running in controlled conditions, you're not just testing tires, you're understanding the car in specific scenarios with surgical precision. You are fine-tuning details that are impossible to replicate on a Grand Prix weekend. And that, in a category where differences are measured in thousands, can make a huge difference. But what really unleashes the impact within Ferrari and subsequently throughout the paddock is the data. When engineers download Hamilton's telemetry, they find something they didn't expect. The performance is not only good, it's remarkably consistent. Energy management, one of the most critical aspects in modern Formula One, appears optimized to very high levels. Adaptation to the car is immediate, and the pacing, even in variable conditions, is solid. This moment is key, because we are not talking about external rumors, we are talking about internal surprise. When a team like Ferrari, with all its experience and previous simulations, is surprised by its own data, it means that something has gone off script. And as always in Formula One, what happens within a team does not take long to spread outside. Leaks begin to circulate, rivals connect parts, and the question begins to take shape in the paddock. How is it possible for a tire test to generate this level of performance and information? Here the conflict arises. Because the problem is not what you see, but what you cannot see. The other teams don't have access to that data, can't replicate those conditions, and don't know exactly what Ferrari has discovered at Fiorano. And in a sport where information is power, that is the most dangerous of all. This is how a simple test becomes a perceived threat. This is how the narrative changes. And this is where the FIA comes into the picture. Not because there is an obvious violation, but because the competitive balance could be at stake. This is the true beginning of the story, not a confirmed scandal, but a suspicion strong enough to put the entire Formula One in check. The moment in which the FIA enters the scene marks a before and after in this story. Because until now everything was suspicions, interpretations, and reactions from the paddock. But when the regulatory body decides to intervene, it means that the situation has crossed an invisible line. Not necessarily a clear illegality, but a point where the balance of the championship could be at risk. The key here is not direct infringement, and that is what makes this case so complex. The FIA is not investigating Ferrari because it has found an illegal part or a clearly prohibited system. What is on the table is something much more difficult to judge. the intelligent or excessively intelligent use of a legal framework that allows certain tests, but that perhaps did not contemplate such profound use as that seen in Fiorano. Because when these types of tests are analyzed with Pirelli, there are very clear rules, but also limitations in supervision. These tests are designed for tire development, not to improve car performance. However, in practice, separating the two is almost impossible. Every lap that a car takes generates information on aerodynamics, mechanical behavior, energy management, data that can be reused, interpreted and applied in the development of the current car. And this is where the FIA puts the focus. The investigation not only revolves around what Ferrari did on the track, but how that data was used afterwards. Were they limited exclusively to tire development? Or is there an indirect transfer of knowledge towards SF26 performance? That is the line that the regulation tries to protect, and the one that is now being questioned. Furthermore, there is a political element that cannot be ignored. Ferrari is not just any team within Formula One. It is a structure with historical weight, influence, and a unique ability to set the course of technical debates. And in 2026 there were already accumulated tensions, especially after the Italian team's own complaints about possible advantages in its rivals' hybrid systems. This creates a delicate situation. Ferrari goes from accuser to investigated in a matter of days. The reaction of the rest of the teams is not coincidental either. In modern Formula One, no one stands idly by when they perceive a possible outside advantage. The teams constantly monitor any activity, any test, any data that may indicate a jump in performance. And in this case, what was leaked from Fiorano was enough to set off all the alarms. Because the real fear is not that Ferrari has done something illegal. It is that it has found a way to optimize the regulations better than anyone else. And that is much more difficult to combat. If everything is within the rules but the result generates a clear advantage, then the problem is no longer the equipment. It is the regulations themselves. That's why the FIA is not only investigating Ferrari, it is also investigating itself. It is reviewing whether the current rules are strong enough to prevent these types of situations. Yes, tests with suppliers like Pirelli need more restrictions. Whether unequal access to infrastructure like Fiorano can break competitive equality. And here appears the real risk for Ferrari. Because even if no violation is proven, the FIA could still take action. Regulatory changes, future limitations, even reinterpretations of what is permitted. In Formula One, you don't need to be guilty for the rules to change against you. It is enough to demonstrate that you have found too big an advantage. This is the heart of the conflict. It's not just a test, not even about Ferrari itself. This is about the limits of modern Formula One, about how far a team can go in the search for performance before the system reacts. And as the investigation progresses, there is a certainty that runs through the entire paddock. Ferrari has done something that has forced the FIA to take a closer look, and that by itself already changes everything. The final act of this story is not only played in the FIA offices, it is played on the track, in the development of the cars, and in the balance of the entire 2026 season. Because when an investigation like this is opened, the consequences are never simple, and are almost never limited to a verdict of legal or illegal. Here the scenario is divided into several possible paths, and all of them have a direct impact on Ferrari and on the rest of the grid. The first scenario, the most direct, is that the FIA does not find any infringement. That everything done by Ferrari and Fiorano is within the regulations. But even in that case, the damage or effect would already be done. Because Ferrari would have shown that there is a way to squeeze these tests to a level that no other team had reached. And that would force everyone to react. Copy, adapt, or lobby to change the rules. The second scenario is much more delicate. Let the FIA determine that, without explicitly breaking the rules, Ferrari has crossed an interpretative line. This is where the famous technical directives usually appear. Changes in the interpretation of the regulations that do not punish the past, but do limit the future. That is, Ferrari would not be sanctioned, but it would lose the advantage it could have built from this test. And then there is the most extreme scenario. Unlikely but impossible to ignore. That the FIA finds some type of improper use of the data, or a direct connection between the test and improvements applied to the performance of the SF26 outside of what is permitted. In that case, we could talk about sports sanctions. From technical limitations to penalties that would directly affect the championship. But regardless of the official outcome, there is something that has already changed forever. The perception within the paddock. Ferrari has gone from being just another competitor to becoming the team that everyone watches. Every improvement, every jump in performance, every result on the track will be analyzed under the shadow of Fiorano. And that has a huge impact. Because in Formula 1, the pressure doesn't just come from the stopwatch. It comes from the rivals. If the other teams think you have found an advantage, they will constantly put pressure on the FIA, they will question every detail, they will try to stop your progress by any means possible. At the same time, this case may cause a domino effect in regulations. Testing with Pirelli, which until now was seen as a controlled technical tool, could become a much more restricted field. Mileage limitations, stricter data control, direct FIA supervision. Everything is on the table. And this is where the story takes its most interesting turn. Because if the FIA decides to tighten the rules, it doesn't just affect Ferrari, it affects everyone. What today seems like a specific advantage, tomorrow could become a lost opportunity for the rest of the teams that will never be able to replicate what happened in Fiorano. In other words, Ferrari could have taken advantage of a window that is already about to close. So the real consequence of all this is not just a possible sanction or an investigation. It is the long-term impact on how cars are developed, how the rules are interpreted, and how modern Formula 1 is raced. Because when a team forces the FIA to react, it means that it has gone beyond what was expected. And in this case, Ferrari has not only attracted attention, it has questioned the limits of the system itself. This is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new battle. One where not only the cars compete on the track, but also the ideas, interpretations, and limits of what is really allowed. Fiorano's story does not end with a response from the FIA. It ends with a doubt that will haunt all of Formula 1 for the rest of the season. Because beyond sanctions, interpretations, or rule changes, what Ferrari has done or what it seems to have done has exposed an uncomfortable reality. There are always ways to go one step further within the regulations. This case is not just about a test, nor about tires, nor even about a particular team. It deals with the limits of engineering, strategic intelligence, and how far a team can go when it combines resources, knowledge, and opportunity at the exact moment. Ferrari has demonstrated something key. In modern Formula 1, the true advantage is not always in an illegal part, but in understanding the system better than anyone else. In finding those spaces where the norm does not prohibit but does not foresee. And when that happens, the rest of the paddock doesn't react with admiration. It reacts with suspicion. The FIA now has the responsibility to decide something much bigger than the fate of Ferrari. You have to define whether these types of situations are part of the game, or if they represent a risk to competitive equality. Because if what happened in Fiorano is considered acceptable, other teams will try to replicate it. But if it is considered excessive, we will see a rule change that will mark the immediate future of the category. And while all that is being resolved, there is something that is already undeniable. Ferrari has struck first. It has put a potential advantage on the table, forced everyone to look in a specific direction, and ignited a battle that goes far beyond the court. Because in Formula 1, it's not just the fastest car that wins. The team that best understands where the limits are wins. And this time, Ferrari seems to have pushed them like no one else. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.